felt like I had gotten a second chance at life.
Right.
So, here I am. I want to, help the hospital and do awareness.
Right.
Just do.
Or I'm going to take the picture of your angiogram and your angiogram, put them together, and frame them for you guys and give it to you, his and hers. But
I don't know if I want to see that every day.
no contrast, no radiation.
A no-brainer.
Right.
You're
No
in
pun
and out.
intended.
It's
All
a
these
no-brainer.
brain jokes. Welcome to another episode of Brain Buzz, where we delve into the fascinating world of neurosciences and brain health. I'm your host, Dr. Kimon Bekelis.
And I am your co-host, Jason Wallen.
All right, Jason, yet another episode. And today's really exciting because we have our first in-person guests for our studio. Guys, welcome. Who do we have here today?
So we have Maria Rizzuto. Hi, Maria.
Hello.
And,
And
go
Michael
ahead.
Rizzuto.
There you go.
Hey, Jason.
So
How you doing,
Maria and Mike are my patients and my close friends now, but they have a very fascinating story, right?
Yes, they do. Sorry, I have multiple roles now that we have the new studio.
So the exciting part, or I guess maybe not exciting is the right word, is that I first met Maria, of course. She came to me as a brain aneurysm patient, and I'll let her tell you the story. But a year or two later, was it a year or two? 2 years later, Mike became my patient, also for a brain aneurysm, which is extremely uncommon. We were chatting just before we started recording, and neither Jason nor I, with collectively probably over 25 years experience in this thing, we haven't seen husband-wife combo brain aneurysm patients. So I guess...
Lucky us.
Yeah, I guess it's not really a badge of honor, but you guys went through it and sailed through it really, and you did spectacular. And we thought, what a better couple to bring to the studio to share their story and inspire people and also help with awareness, because we all think we're invincible, and brain aneurysms do not hurt. Brain aneurysms generally, of course, before they rupture, they don't cause a lot of symptoms. And the symptoms that they might cause, we tend to ignore. And, if an aneurysm ruptures, of course, we all know the consequences of that. And, of course, we've talked a lot about it in this podcast. But really, when a brain aneurysm ruptures, for those of you who haven't watched this, from the beginning, pretty much half the patients die right away. And from those that survive and we fix their aneurysm after the rupture, only about a third will make it out of the hospital without any issues. So welcome, guys.
Thank you for having us.
And maybe, Maria, we'll start with you, since you're the first person I actually met both of you in the office.
You did.
And I remember, this is like a sophisticated couple, I really need to explain to them what's going on with brain aneurysms. So what happened? How'd you end up in Babylon in this building?
So for years, I was diagnosed with an unruptured aneurysm. I think it was 4 years before I met you.
Okay.
And initially when I was diagnosed, it was like a brick hit me. I was like, aneurysm, what's an aneurysm?
Right.
And, went to the internet and just kind of just tried to figure it out on my own and read everything that I can read. And at the time I was living in West Islip, which is not too far from here.
Right, right.
And like many, I think, I thought the best care would be in the city, in Manhattan.
Right.
So I searched and searched for names, and I started going to, one after the other. Actually, let me back up real quick. I wasn't feeling well. I was having headaches.
Right.
So before I was diagnosed. And I would go to the doctors and I would be like, there's something wrong in my head.
Right.
There's something wrong. And
Right.
they were like, oh, you're so young. You're fine. You're not a problem. I was like, there's something wrong. I know there's something wrong. So I had slight headaches and
Ear ringing too, right?
I had some ear ringing, and I would tell him, babe, I think I have a tumor. And he
Yeah.
would be like, what?
It's not a tumor.
It's not a tumor. Right. And by the way, we share another thing with Maria, guys. Maria is Greek, so am I. And us Greeks worry about stuff like that.
Greek.
So, yes, go ahead.
So I kind of just knew women just, I feel we're more in tune with our intuition, and I knew there was something wrong, and I wouldn't be able to find someone who would give me a script to go get an MRI. And I was
Wow.
like, there's something wrong. So I think I went to 3 different neurologists in the city. And finally, this one woman was like, okay, fine, let's get you checked out. And she's like, okay, come back in 2 weeks. So I
Right.
go back in 2 weeks, and I'm sitting in her office, and she's like, I'm sorry to say this to you. I was like, oh my God. So I had driven from West Islip into the city, and we all know how long it takes to go into the city, right? So I'm sitting,
Oh yeah, 2 hours in traffic, and then there you are,
and then you're trying to find a parking
parking
garage.
for another hour.
Right. So I'm sitting in her office, and she's like, I'm sorry to say that. I'm like, oh my goodness, what's coming? She's like, you have an aneurysm. And I was like, excuse me? So at that moment, I felt like my whole life flashed before me. My son, I think, was not even 2 at the time.
Right.
And I was like, okay, well, what do we do? And she's like, oh, we're not going to do anything right now. We're just going to watch it. And I was like, what? We're just going to watch it. That does not work for me.
Right.
So I went home and I went online and I started just Googling doctors. And I saw one, and he was like, well, the aneurysm is inside your brain, and we have to do, an angiogram. And I was like, okay. And then I would go see another one. They were like, oh, well, your aneurysm is outside the brain. You don't need to do anything.
Right.
And I was like, okay, let's go see a third. And then I went to see the third, and they were like, oh, it's inside your brain. Let's, we'll get you into surgery or something. And I was like, whoa.
Right.
And then I went to see a fourth one, and they were like, oh, no, it's outside your brain.
Right. And what Maria, guys, is talking about is, some brain aneurysms are part of the carotid artery that starts from the neck, goes up into the brain, and then there's a point where the carotid artery makes it inside the brain proper. And so an aneurysm that's below that threshold is generally a benign problem you don't need to do anything about other than monitor. There's some that you need to treat, but generally you don't need to. And the ones that are inside the brain are the ones that we spoke about that can rupture, kill somebody, debilitate, what have you. And of course, there's other considerations that have to do with morphology, with size, but the big question for Maria was, is this in or is this out? And sounds like, us as a medical establishment really confused the heck out of you.
Correct. And then I found this world-renowned neurosurgeon, neurologist, head of, ABC, amazing doctor, I think number 3 in the world or something like that. And Michael and I,
According to Google.
Michael and I were like, whatever he says, we're going
going
to do.
with it.
That's it. So whatever it is that he says, we're doing.
Because I bet you're pretty tired by that time of listening to different opinions.
At that point,
yeah.
I didn't know if I was coming or going. And we sat in his office, and he sent me down for yet another scan. And then I sat in his office, and he's like, oh, don't worry about it. It's fine. It's outside. Oh, we're like, oh, it's outside. Okay.
Yeah.
We don't have to worry about it. And he was like, okay, come back in 2 years and do a scan.
Right.
2 years? I don't think so.
Not for a Greek.
No.
Guys,
So
not
I
for a
was
Greek.
I was calling him in 8 months, making my next appointment for a yearly scan. And then I would go in a year, and he would just look at me like, right?
What are you doing here again?
He would look at us like, again, you two? I'm like, my son's 3 years old. I know I have children. I need to be
Right.
around. Can you just open up my head and just fix it? He'd be like, oh, you're fine. You're fine. Don't worry about it. So this went on for about 4 or 5 years. Was it 4 or 5 years?
I think it was 5.
I think it was 5 years.
Wow.
And honestly, I would travel. We like to travel. And before we went anywhere, I would Google the closest hospital. And
Always prepared.
always prepared. I would be like, you know what? I'm Greek. If I yell too loud, if I get angry, it's like,
And that we do, guys.
What's going to happen? So I was living in 5 years of total fear.
Right.
And then COVID happened. So I get a call that it was time for my scan, and then my yearly scan.
Right.
And I called the office, and they were like, oh, XYZ doctor is retiring. And I was like, what? Oh, no, he's not. And what am I going to do? So
He didn't ask me.
he didn't even call me. So I called his office, and obviously he wouldn't take my phone call. And they were like, oh yeah, he's going to refer you to his associate, whatever.
Right.
I'm like, no, this is no bueno.
Yeah.
This
Yep.
is not good. So I go and I get my scan done, and now after COVID, where your reports going? They're going to
Online,
They're
yeah.
going to my email. So now I could see what my reports is saying. So I remember this day. I was sitting in my home office and I look at the report and you forget your password and you're resetting your
Right.
password for the 5th time. And I finally look at it and I'm like, this can't be my report. I'm checking my name and it says that it's doubled in size and that it's inside the cavernous,
brain cavity, yeah,
Right,
yeah.
right. So I was like, this is, here we go again.
Right. Right.
And I feel like my head's spinning. So I got in touch with some friends. In fact, this one lady that had an office here for, I don't know, 40 years, internal medicine doctor. And she's like, so I was on this prayer chain for years.
Right.
And I text them. I'm like, oh God, people, I need your prayers. Like this is happening again. Like I need a neurosurgeon. I need to get a second, third opinion, whatever. I need him to
At
be.
that point, it was probably 7th, but
And I need him to be in Manhattan. So Pam texts me, she's like, Maria, do not be impressed by the hospital. Be impressed by the doctor. And she gave me your name.
she's very
So
insightful in
I
that case.
said,
Brilliant.
I said, Bekelis.
Is that Greek?
Yeah, exactly.
So I called and I made an appointment and then I came to see you. And at that point we were exhausted.
Right.
And I remember one of the nurses that came in and PA or whoever she was, and she sat down and she was like, well, I think you're going to need an angiogram.
Right.
And I was like, no problem, but can the doctor tell me that?
Yep. That's also Greek, guys. We do not trust anybody other than the doctor.
So I was like, okay, that's fine, but I'd like to speak to the doctor first. So then you walked in and you were like, oh my God, I've seen all your reports.
You had a lot.
And I don't know, it just, your demeanor, it was very comforting, right? And you could take it from there, I guess.
Super, yeah, and we'll talk a little bit about what happened after, but maybe kind of at the first part where you're struggling with this diagnosis and living with it and traveling the world with,
A ticking time bomb.
Well,
that's how I felt.
No, for sure, and I try to avoid saying it myself because I don't want to scare people. Of course, when you need something done, you should get something done. If you don't, and we're monitoring an aneurysm, it's really, we should be comfortable with that. In your case, sounds like the aneurysm was changing and it wasn't really noticed. The change wasn't noticed, which of course is a problem. But I want to see kind of how Mike was handling this, because as far as Mike was concerned, he was healthy. He had no issues. Life was good. Of course, his wife was struggling, but he was there for support. So how did you kind of conceptualize the whole thing, and what was your role in grounding Maria, which I'm sure was not an easy task?
Definitely not easy.
No. It's thinking back now, how she was very emotional through the whole thing.
Right.
And I was, listening to the doctors and trying to reassure her that these are highly, highly rated and recommended medical professionals, and that I understand that you're nervous and that you're worried. She just said, ticking time bomb. I can't tell you how many times I heard her say, I have a ticking time bomb in my head you don't understand.
Right.
And I would just try to calmly reassure her that the doctors are, monitoring it. And, look, the doctor said you don't have to come back for another 2 years.
Right.
And, it went right past her. She was like, nope, we're going to go back.
So if it's not happening to you,
Right.
you can't understand it.
You cannot. You're right.
And that's what I kept reiterating. Like, I understand your support,
Right.
and I know that you love me and that you're grounding me and you're trying to support me, but it's not happening to you, buddy.
Right.
It's
Right.
it's in my head. So
No pun intended. Yes, it was in your head.
For sure. So just, trying to be compassionate and supportive and grounding and, be that person who'll, allow her to vent
Right.
about her feelings and hopefully, allow the pressure to kind of come down a little bit.
Did you ever think of the future in terms of are we going to have to deal with this for the rest of our lives? I mean, obviously she's distressed. She's, constantly thinking about this thing. Is this going to be, for the next 40 years, is this going to be a constant
That's a good question.
thing?
Yeah. I mean, put yourself in a position where you're with your spouse and you have these.
That's what I would be thinking. I'd be like, oh man.
Exactly. Well, that's kind of a selfish thing to think that way. Like, oh my God, am I going to have to deal with this nervous
No,
wife?
but
for the
still,
rest?
it is. Yeah.
But I was really more focused on trying to be in the moment,
Right.
listening to the medical advice,
Right,
and trusting the experts, and on my own. Everybody has a different personality.
Right.
In my own head, trying to say, how can I get her to feel about this the way that I do, which is,
Right.
all right, we're going to watch it, and if anything changes, we'll take whatever action is recommended at that point.
Right.
So it was very difficult for her to obviously get her mind around that or to feel that way, because it was definitely causing her a tremendous amount of worry and anxiety.
Right. And Maria, on your end, were you thinking that one day this will be taken care of, or was it?
No.
No, you thought we're in a path now. We're monitoring it. Of course,
No.
after the no.
No, I thought I was going to die.
Oh, okay.
So,
Gotcha.
church and just like talking to my pastor, and I remember going in for the angiogram. I literally thought I wasn't coming out alive. I was so frightened.
Right. And maybe we'll catch everybody up. We chatted and we decided that Maria's going to have an angiogram to see exactly whether the aneurysm is in or out. Appeared to be in, but of course you never know until you look at some landmarks in the brain. And then the second was to truly measure the size of the aneurysm, since based on the reports it was actually growing. But of course that was not what was communicated to you. But the reports were you read them yourself, and so. So we wanted to see the true size, morphology, or shape of the aneurysm, and then is it in or is it out, right? And so an angiogram, like a lot of you guys know, we've done videos on this, is a simple procedure. We go through the groin with a needle stick, take pictures of the blood vessels. It doesn't take us more than 5-10 minutes, and we kind of can answer questions like that. It's the gold standard for imaging, and we do it when we're considering an intervention, right? So maybe you can tell us the story of that angiogram.
So now coming through it, being on the other side,
And being a graduate of multiple procedures.
Exactly. It really was nothing to be worried about. But here I am, my priest had given me this huge cross from like a monastery in Greece. And it was like, you take this with you. And I remember it was right after COVID, I think, because we still had to wear masks.
Right.
And Michael had to drop me off. And I had to go through all this by myself, and I'm sitting there in that bed, and they're coming, and I'm crying. It was...
So at the time that she had the surgery, the angiogram and then the surgery,
right,
we were living in, I think it was Glen Cove at the time. And I dropped her off, and because of all of the restrictions with COVID, I was not allowed to wait in the waiting area.
Yeah, we tend to forget how horrible that is,
or
that was for
I was
families.
afraid to go home. Because I didn't want to be too far if somebody called me and said, hey, you need to get here.
Right.
I drove around
for an hour.
I think it was longer.
Yeah.
It was like 2.5, 3 hours I was driving in circles.
Wow.
Which is,
Oh, no, I'm saying you had to drive for an hour to go back to Glen Cove and then back, so that was not really an option.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
So angiogram time, and I'm there in Good Samaritan Hospital, and I'm like wearing my cross.
It wasn't that big, Maria.
It was like a life-size crucifix.
Yeah, no, it wasn't that big.
From Father P. And I remember there was a prayer that comes
Overhead, yeah.
Overhead.
Good Sam, there's the morning prayer.
It just like kind of relaxed me. I was like, okay, this is going to be okay. And then it was so quick.
Tends to be.
It was very quick, and I remember you coming out and you were like, yep, it's inside. So I said, let's do it now. Can you do it now?
Yeah, Maria was, jumping the gun. So the aneurysm was in the brain, of course, if you allow me to share some information. And the type of treatment that we would use would require putting Maria on blood thinners temporarily for a few days before we treated the aneurysm. And that, of course, we would do that, bring her back, get that treatment going. We brought you back, fixed the aneurysm. And you wanted to get out of the hospital. So Maria is very energetic. There's always something going on. There's always a tennis match, most recently a pickleball match. So she needed to get out of the hospital. Yeah, go ahead.
Needed.
Yeah.
So
she was trying to bargain about leaving immediately after her.
Let me
her
tell
aneurysm
everybody.
was
Let me
fixed.
tell these people who are watching how important this detail is. So I go in. He puts a stent in my brain, and I wake up feeling like I just had the best sleep in my life, and I felt great.
Right.
I mean, I had someone holding down my leg for 3 hours.
That was probably Amanda or Elizabeth, I would think. Yes.
I love Amanda. Love you, Amanda. But honestly, I was like, why was I worried? It was such a easy-going procedure. Everyone at the hospital, the nurses, amazing, kind. I don't know. It was just, for what it was,
Right. Yeah. So
it was a great experience.
and that's and honestly, that's the evolution of neurointervention or neurovascular neurosurgery, right? It used to be that almost always we would have to do these large procedures, take part of the skull off, place a clip at the neck of the aneurysm. If we think of the aneurysm as a balloon, we'd put a clip at the neck and prevent the blood from going in. And obviously that was a much more significant undertaking. You have an incision, you go into the brain, surrounding tissues around the brain, and eventually you're able to put a clip there, which we still do, but we do it much less frequently. Now we have all these endovascular options. Endovascular means through the blood vessel options that, we're really far away from the target, the groin or the wrist, we're headed all the way up into the brain, and we're able to offer those treatments. And so the goal is, we've really shifted treatment to almost an outpatient procedure. The reason you're staying, as a matter of fact, is because we want to be very careful and want to make sure the first 24 hours, which are the most critical one, especially when you're placing a stent, we want to make sure there's no clotting or any other issues. That happens in the first 24 hours mostly. And so that's the reason you're staying. And for the majority of the people, this is an extremely boring experience, which is exactly what we want.
Well, I do remember I was like, I'm fine. Can I just go home?
Right. No, that's what I was saying. You were, begging to get out of there.
Begging.
And the next day, I think you left very, very early.
And it was just overnight, literally.
Right. It was overnight, and in the morning you were gone.
And as I'm leaving, I was asking you, how soon can I play tennis?
Yes. So Maria was bargaining, was trying to play tennis. There's two patients. We treat a lot of patients at the Stroke and Brain Aneurysm Center on Long Island, and there's two of them that really have, pushed me to go back to activities very early on. One was Maria.
Shocking.
And and one was Maria. And I mean, I guess Mike was also not very compliant. Now
I was going to say that has
now
to be
that I
second
think
person.
about it,
Probably
right?
3.
I forgot about that. It was two ladies that I had in mind. One was Maria, who wanted to play. You played tennis how long after?
8
4
days.
days? 8 days. Okay. Ooh, thank God.
But
so
after
you waited.
3 days, after 3 days, I called you.
Yeah. So Maria was begging. She wanted to play. There's another patient that I gave her the spiel. I coiled her aneurysm. Coiling is when we put a little strands of platinum inside the sac of the aneurysm to clot it off. Young lady also, and she's a nurse. And I told her, take it easy for a week or so. You'll be fine, but take it easy. So 2 days after I fixed her aneurysm, she ran a marathon. She didn't tell me until I saw her in follow-up, and I said, how you doing? She's like, I'm doing great. I ran the marathon. I'm like, you did the what? So I was like, so what would have happened if there was an issue with your groin where we accessed, if there's bleeding or something of that nature? It's like, I would have held pressure. It's all good. So, these two ladies, stand out for sure in terms of their ability to, overcome what most people would take a little longer. We tell people, take it easy. It's your opportunity once in your lifetime to take it easy and people take care of you. Nope. Some of you don't really listen.
Sorry.
Yeah, bad patience.
Sorry, not sorry.
Yeah, I know. So then, yes, you went back to full-scale life activities, and then you got into kind of a follow-up schedule where we,
Right.
for a couple of times, we have to look with angiograms to make sure that the aneurysm is gone. The stent looks good on the inside. There's no buildup of lining of the blood vessel inside the stent, all that stuff. So you had your first follow-up.
Well, right. Well, after you put the stent in, then my first follow-up to see
if it's there or
if
not.
it's there. Is it there or not?
Yeah.
Right? It's the $1 million question. And
spoiler alert.
I remember that I woke up in the operating room.
On the table, yeah.
On the table. And, I mean, anesthesia and all. But I'm like, what happened? I was like, Doc, what happened? What happened? And he's like, he makes jokes too. He's like, I hope you weren't attached to an aneurysm because it's gone.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay.
It was. And, what Maria is saying is that you're not fully asleep for the angiograms. Of course, you get anesthesia to be kind of in this twilight zone, like a colonoscopy type of anesthesia. But, pretty much at the end, they let you emerge from anesthesia and we can have a conversation. Because I like to tell people on the table, they're there, they're wondering. Because once they're out in the waiting room, I've called the family. So now the family knows. The patient's wondering what the hell's going on because now they're fully awake. So I'd rather folks be a little bit more awake in the room to kind of
best news ever.
Get the first news,
Best news.
Yeah,
and I hadn't told my children.
So yeah, tell me about that actually. How you guys of course have a lot of kids and different ages and everything else. And so how were you navigating that? Did you tell some of the children? Did you tell nothing to any of the children?
So during the angiogram, the initial one, to see, what was going on, like I told you, I was petrified.
Right. So
I thought I was dying. I had my
Mike
will.
was the only one.
Mike was the only one that knew. We hadn't told anyone. And then when he got the call that I was, I guess you called him, because again, he wasn't allowed in.
I did.
I told him to tell my daughter, who at the time was 17.
Okay.
And we didn't tell the little one. He didn't have to know.
She was younger than that.
Was she?
Yeah, she's
17 now.
She's
18 now.
Yeah, so 16.
So this is like, I think she was
15
like
or
13.
16. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's all a blur.
Time flies when you're
That's
having fun,
right,
Maria.
Time flies. So, and then when I did the stent, I think we told Athena, we told my daughter, but not the little one.
Okay.
And she's going to college now. Guess what she's studying?
Exactly.
Neuroscience.
There you go.
So
we had a little influence on her life, hopefully for the
a
better.
lot.
all three of us, I think.
Exactly.
But yeah.
So of course that's tough to kind of reconcile, telling the kids, not telling the kids. And, for those of you guys who are struggling out there with similar diagnosis and whether you include your family, at the end of the day, it comes to, exactly, it's a personal preference and knowing your family and know how they'll react. And to some extent, you don't want it to be a hindrance by them knowing.
Correct.
Sometimes you want to go through it and kind of get everybody on board.
Yeah, so we had told our parents. I told my parents who were in Greece and had visited every monastery and every church there was ever
there
built.
You go.
Lighting candles and praying, making what do they call damata in English? The promises.
Promises to the gods.
To the God that, if my daughter comes through this, I'll build,
Ancient Greek.
the church or something. But, Michael's parents, my in-laws, praying. I had
Or
decided,
of course Italian American, right?
Correct. I had decided that I didn't want my children knowing until I was out of this.
Right.
Because I didn't want them worrying. Again, it's a personal decision. Michael did not agree with me. He wanted me to tell them. But again, it was, since I was the one who was going.
At the end of the day, it's your choice,
At the end of the day,
right?
it was my choice. So.
Right.
Well, I wanted you to tell them right before. I didn't think that them knowing well in advance was going to help you with your anxiety level.
Right.
So.
That makes sense. And so your story is fascinating in and of itself, Maria, right? Because, of course, you don't have the traditional brain aneurysm story where, you find you have a brain aneurysm, you see a doc, you get an intervention if needed, you get it fixed or you follow it and, things move smoothly. In your case, it was more of a bumpy ride, getting multiple different pieces of information.
We're out of the woods.
Yes. But what I'm saying is your story isn't in and of itself exciting.
Right.
Right? So get Mike out of the picture, the story is exciting. But then something else happened, which is entirely unexpected and very, very rare. Brain aneurysms are rare in and of themselves in the community. Of course, they're very common for a place like here because, of course, people come here for brain aneurysm treatment. But out there, they're not that common. And then you take two people who found love, got married, started a family, and now they both have brain aneurysms, and of course, they're not related. And so that in and of itself is so extremely rare, and that makes your guys' story so much more exciting. And so of course, then after your treatment, you became friendly with my wife.
Correct.
And, with myself. And so I generally try to avoid being friends with my patients, right? Because you never know what happens, and you don't want to have, to be able to deliver effective care. It's not that you don't want to care. You want to care. You care as a physician, but you don't want to care to the point that they're a friend, they're a family. That's another level of relationship that, to some extent can get in the way of treating somebody, because now you're emotionally invested in addition to just caring as a provider, right? That's somebody you love, and now here they are, and you kind of are operating on them.
You have to be a little bit more objective, right?
Right. And so, and of course, treating a brain aneurysm, all kidding aside, is a substantial intervention, and you want to be able to do that without the emotional aspect attached to it. And so, of course, we were very friendly.
Well, I didn't go away.
No, but
Afterwards.
But we were hanging out.
I wanted to do
more,
because I felt it was my responsibility to bring awareness out there.
Right.
And do as much as I can. I felt like I had gotten a second chance at life.
Right.
So, here I am. I want to, help the hospital and do awareness.
Right.
And just do.
And you did things, of course, partnering with other organizations, by yourself also, whatever you could do, which is amazing that you kind of found time out of your busy schedule to kind of direct your energy in that direction, right? But like I said, I never thought, of course, that Mike would ever be a patient of mine in the same kind of fashion. And I always tell Hillary, don't be too friendly with our patients, because, I never know what happens, right? And so how did we scan Mike? What happened?
So I started doing, I opened up, I got a TikTok channel and just
right.
brain aneurysm awareness, period. And talking to a lot of people, anyone that I met, I'd be like, check your brain.
Right.
Go get an MRI. And, go check.
Right.
And, at that time I was saying, because the stats said 1 in 50 people have an unruptured aneurysm.
Right.
And anyone and anywhere that we were, I would just like,
tell them to get checked.
How do you feel? Do you have a headache?
True story.
How do you feel? I mean, do you have high blood pressure? Or anyone in your family ever have a stroke or drop dead? Like, so you need to get checked out. So
reasonable.
I was doing a lot of aneurysm awareness, and Michael's dad, I think when he was 60, he had a stroke.
Okay.
So at the time, I think he was having some brain fog or whatnot, and I was like, just go get checked out, babe.
Right.
I mean, I tell strangers.
Right.
And I
might as well,
And I remember
we don't just care for strangers, Mike.
I remember we were going to. He went and he got a scan, and I think it was the day that we were going to the U.S. Open, right? It was in September.
Yeah.
That I texted Hillary. I'm like,
Hillary's my wife, by the way.
I love Hillary. Hillary, I love you. I was like, what's going on?
Right. And so she showed me the scan. I took a look at the scan. I think the report was already in. Mm-hmm. And lo and behold, Mike had an aneurysm. And, my first reaction, I guess it was a lot more animated than I'm going to tell you guys, but my first reaction was, you got to be kidding me. Pretty much. Maybe a little bit more vulgar. But, first of all, this is not something you expect in a family generally. In a family, of course, first-degree relatives that are blood-related, you might see that. There's some families that have family history brain aneurysms, but it's uncommon that,
Both of us.
Both of you guys at random have a brain aneurysm. And so, I told Hillary that, and then I said, well, the size of the aneurysm, the location, everything else was actually slightly larger than yours. And so
it was double the size of mine.
And so we said,
well, when yours was first detected.
Right.
Right. So at the current state, it was slightly larger, and I said, well, I guess
go big or go home.
Yeah, you just went straight to the end.
But he had No symptoms.
Zero, which is more common. So,
Zero.
So most of the times people, and that's why a lot of folks call it the silent killer, because it doesn't really manifest as anything for the most part. And so, I said, here we go again. I'm going to have to do an angiogram and maybe treat it and, all that stuff. And one of my biggest concerns was like, now I know these guys very, very well. And, of course, I'm emotionally invested, which is not the best thing. And so...
Well, we like it.
You guys love it, but, the emotional burden. And I don't drink. Imagine if I was drinking after I do these procedures, I'd turn into an alcoholic when I take care of my patients, my friends.
We're very grateful.
And so we said we're going to do an angiogram and all that stuff. And so how did you experience that? Of course, you've had the whole experience with Maria. And now we're like, hey, by the way, you got something also going on.
So as interesting and as much of an emotional roller coaster as Maria's story was, mine was very, very different.
Right.
As she said, I'm living with probably Long Island's best brain aneurysm screening awareness advocate.
Right.
And I'm, just living my life and doing whatever.
Ignoring everything, yeah.
And, Maria touched on it. As you get a little bit older, you never, I feel great, but you start to, maybe every now and then you walk in the room and you forgot what you were going in there for. So
right.
Based on my family's medical history and Maria's suggestion, I said, okay, I'll get scanned, see if there's anything going on. I know with a lot of neurological issues, early detection, just like
right.
anything else, is a great thing. So there's really no reason not to. And had the test, and I went about my business. I wasn't even thinking about it.
Right.
And Maria was like, hey, did you ever hear anything from Dr. Bekelis' office about the test, about the MRI? I'm like, no. She's like, oh, I'm going to call Hillary.
Yeah.
And I think
she went straight to the boss.
I think you guys
went behind my back.
I think you guys might have been out of town.
We were.
And she reached out, and Hillary had told her, oh, we didn't hear anything, but I'll take a look and see if I can,
pull up the scan.
See the scan. And while all this is going on, I'm like, I'm at work, I'm doing what I do, and very focused on the goings on. And she calls me up, and she's like, are you sitting down?
By the way, this is a horrible way to start a conversation.
Why?
And I'm like,
sitting down? Are you sitting down?
She says, are you sitting down? And I'm like, all right, just get to it. I'm busy. Because I had, honestly, it was like in and out of that scan in a matter of a few minutes, and I had moved on. I wasn't expecting to
It's an 8-minute scan, by the way.
Yeah. So
my
I'm
last
like,
one was 6.
Nice. Getting better and better.
I'm like, okay, here comes the drama. What is it? I thought she was going to tell me about the dog did something or one of the kids, right? And she says, you have an aneurysm. I said, come again? So, completely different experience than what Maria went through. And, we joke around in a moment of levity. She'll be like, oh, you owe me. I saved your life. But she really did.
Greek will always hold that over your head.
I think it's as much a wife thing as it is a husband thing. But
the truth.
She said, go get this test done. What's the matter with you? Didn't you see what happened with me?
Right.
And probably because, I just felt great and I was aware that the odds of both of us having similar situation was so minute, improbable. It didn't faze me.
Right.
So the great news for me is A, she pushed me to get the test, and B, she had gone through the whole kind of 3-ring circus that she already described, and I didn't have any of that because I knew who my doctor was going to be.
Yeah.
I knew what to expect.
Paved the way.
Paved the way.
I knew what to expect. I knew what the level of care was going to be, which was very comforting. And I was living with a person who had gone through the same exact thing. So I knew, that there was going to be a good ending to this story.
He's serious.
We're hoping for that, yes, always.
He wasn't worried at all.
Right. No, I mean, he told me he wasn't worried. I remember the summer before you were diagnosed with brain aneurysm, you guys were over at our house for dinner with a bunch of other friends, and it so happened that I had operated on a lot of those friends, right? And we were joking, we're
That
talking
he was
about
the only one.
that he's the only one, and he was talking about his back, and I said stay away from physicians and all that stuff, right? I guess you shouldn't joke much about stuff because
Don't tempt fate.
you tempt fate enough, it comes for you.
I know, it's crazy.
So again, we started to talk about a treatment protocol and a timeline to get these things done, and I guess because of the size of it having been double the size that Maria's was when she had it detected, you really didn't want me to wait, and I was like, "Oh, we've got a couple of trips
Yeah,
planned.
he's like, "Oh, when we come back." I'm like, "No."
This was September, and when I was diagnosed with it, and I'm like, "Oh, maybe after the new year, And you looked at me, you're like, "No, you're not waiting." So
That was not a great idea to wait. Yes.
I tell that just because I think it's a good reflection on how not really concerned I was, or how at
Right.
peace I was, knowing that I had the right doctor and I knew what was going to happen, and I just concluded in my mind that it was going to be a good outcome just based on Maria's experience. So I really wasn't in a rush or worried.
Right, and one thing that's important to kind of for our listeners and our viewers to understand is, of course, not every brain aneurysm needs treatment. Majority do not, and we follow them for a long period of time, and hopefully we never need to do anything to them. Right. On the flip side, if an aneurysm does need treatment, it's a little bit of a different conversation, and the reason is, it's a blessing in disguise to know about an aneurysm that has not ruptured, that it's of a size, morphology, location that is dangerous enough to warrant something being done about it, but you get that opportunity to do it, in a very relaxed way, and through the groin or through the wrist with minimal impact on your body, before you're in a situation where you're either dead or, of course, severely debilitated from a brain aneurysm. And so, actually, one of the PSAs that I've seen for brain aneurysm awareness talks a lot about, if you know about a brain aneurysm, deal with it. Of course, we're all busy and we all have the dance recital and the family obligations, but if you don't deal with it, there's not going to be another dance recital, right? And there's also this thing about brain aneurysms that you alluded to, Maria, where we don't really know necessarily when an aneurysm will rupture, right? It's all probability. Mm-hmm. It's all over the year and over years possibility of rupture. And we can make predictions based on shape, size, location, but we don't know 100%. And so if we feel very comfortable on our end, having seen a lot of these and knowing the literature to monitor something like that, then that's fine. But if we're feeling that something needs to happen, then that's kind of a warning sign, I think. And Mike was like, okay, I guess I'll get it taken care of. But he was very relaxed, and I'll tell you, from most of my, and by the way, most brain aneurysm patients are ladies, and they tend to be very much on top of, like, I want this taken care of, it's my life. And ladies tend to be a lot more on top of their health. Us guys, not so much. And
Guilty as charged.
I'm probably the most guilty when it comes to that, right? And so dealing with a guy on the other end was a very different experience than dealing with you. But at the same time, you also sailed through it no problem. You guys had the same exact treatment, the flow diverting stent, because your aneurysm was in that particular location behind the eye, where that is the ideal treatment option.
So now we have his and her stents.
Exactly.
Do we get a prize?
You know what I thought when you said his and hers? You know what I think I'm going to do? I think I'm going to print out I'm going to take the picture of your angiogram and your angiogram, put them together, and frame them for you guys and give it to you, his and hers. I just thought of that.
Just ruin the surprise, though.
Man. Yeah, but I couldn't hold it to myself. I was like, that's such a good idea. I don't know why I've never done that.
I don't know if I want to see that every day.
Maybe you put it away somewhere, but at
Maybe.
least you have it.
Maybe. But when Mike was going through that, again, we did not tell the little one. We did not tell my son.
Poor guy. He's been kept out of everything.
And I remember I took him to the hospital for his stent.
He's half Greek. he's going to worry.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
If you ask Maria, he's 100% Greek.
That's right.
The good part is
The
Greek.
good part. So he went through it. He was fine, obviously. And I came home. I think I went and I picked him up from school. And I said to him, and he had to stay overnight.
Right.
So he's like, "Where's Dad?" And I was like, "Well, Anthony, I have to tell you something." He's like, "What happened to my dad? Where is my dad?" I was like, "Relax, Anthony. Do you remember what Mommy had in her head? And the aneurysm, everything is fine." He started crying.
Oh, boy.
So I was like, "Everything is fine. Everything is fine." So I FaceTimed him and he saw him.
Okay.
And, that's why I didn't tell him.
Right.
So he's very young. He was very young.
How old was he at the time?
It was
It was his last year, so
October.
he's
Ten.
10 now.
10.
9, yeah. So, that's stressful, right? And, we all try to hide things from our kids, but they're so attentive to detail, and they're routine driven. You don't show up at home one night.
Where's my dad?
Exactly. So, but of course, happy ending. So that's all that matters.
Thank God, yeah.
And so I know you guys, of course, are passionate about the cause of brain aneurysm awareness, and you, Maria, have been spearheading that for a long time. And you guys are also very philanthropic, and I know, of course, you probably don't want to talk about it, but on the brain aneurysm side, and us as providers delivering care, and our care is a lot dependent on people knowing about it and doing something about it. Of course, I like to say we're glorified plumbers. We do things on the back end. We fix blood vessel problems, circulation.
You're a lot more than that. Come on.
Well, really, that's what we are. But the point is, if we do not see those patients on time, if we don't see those patients before something horrible happens, how much of an impact are we having, right? So you fix a brain aneurysm that could potentially down the line take somebody's life. You've changed their own life, their family's life, their kids' lives. So it's such a profound impact on the community, right? But really, you would never have that privilege to do that unless that person sought care or took a scan or whatever it is. And now your role as a brain aneurysm survivor, and both of you, I tend to forget that Mike had the same thing done, but your role is, and you've embraced that, is to spread awareness and get more people engaged and understanding of what's going on, and not let that be a hindrance, but kind of more of a you're using that to your advantage to get the word out and get people educated.
Well, here's what I say to anyone really that would listen is it's not 1 in 50, it's 1 in 20
Right.
that have unruptured aneurysms, as you can see the stats with us.
Right, and you're right, and there's a lot of people out there, as you're mentioning, sorry to interrupt you, that actually are placing that percentage to much higher numbers, like you say, 1 in 20. And there's some national organizations that are behind that number. Yes.
Right. Women are double the risk.
Right.
I think they said that, from what I read, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, the Hispanic population and the African American population are double the risk
That's right.
of having unruptured aneurysms.
High risk for sure, yeah.
And I feel that you need to advocate for yourself. If you feel there's something wrong, I also know that high blood pressure plays a big role.
Right.
Polycystic, what is it?
Polycystic kidney disease, yeah.
disease is also another huge factor.
Yeah, so folks that have, Maria is referring to some folks that have some familial problems, some genetic issues, and those categories have a high risk for a brain aneurysm formation. But like she said, high blood pressure is associated with high risk, not to form, but to rupture a brain aneurysm for high blood pressure. And for smoking, it's associated with high risk to form and to rupture a brain aneurysm. And you guys were not smokers, of course, and here it is. So, of course, if you're a smoker, that risk is substantially higher. And so we always say, I'm not one to preach, of course, but the truth of the matter is, of course, smoking is problematic for a multitude of reasons. But, of course, in my narrow field, brain aneurysm formation and rupture are very much associated with smoking.
And the elephant in the room, which I call it, no one wants to talk about it.
Right.
I don't see anything on television. I mean, there's no PSA, public service announcements. There's no
Right.
commercials. You know, they talk about mammograms and they talk about heart attacks and
Right.
everything, but no one wants to talk about aneurysms.
Well, maybe there isn't really as much of a business case for that. When you want to understand why things are
Right, you
usually
always follow the money.
Follow the money, and maybe there isn't a prescription medication that could be given, or obviously I'm not a physician, but there is a business to medicine, and
Right. Of course.
and the things that are generally better at providing revenue streams are going to be the ones that you're going to see the advertisement on television for the treatment, certainly much more so than something that you may not even realize you're suffering from or that you have
Right.
until it's too late.
Right, and when it comes to screening, right, screening is mainly driven by the insurance industry, and in the insurance industry, there's a lot of actuarial data that is being looked at at any time, and brain aneurysms, despite the fact that they're so catastrophic, when they do rupture, the cost of screening large amounts of the population is prohibitive as compared to the benefit. Of course, it's kind of bad.
Tell that to the person who had
Exactly.
an aneurysm stented.
Or to the person that had an aneurysm rupture, right, and lost their life. And so that's why I say that the word benefit there is in quotation marks. I mean, there is no, like we say, statistics are statistics, but
Until
if it's you, it's 100%. And, it might be 1 in a million, right? But if it's you, it's 100%. And so that one person, the downstream, like I said before, the downstream impact to your life, your family, your productivity, your society, your community, your church, is so profound that,
that's why important. That's why it's so important that we talk about it.
Yes.
And it's important that awareness is spread. Screenings. It's honestly to get a 6-minute scan
Right.
that can save your life
Right.
is
No contrast, no
a
radiation.
no-brainer.
Right.
You're
No
in and
pun
out.
intended.
It's
All
a
these
no-brainer.
brain jokes. Brain jokes and brain buzz. That is just perfect. And so, of course, the brain aneurysms are behind you guys now, right? And do you ever think of it anymore? Or I know Mike doesn't. Never did before.
Well, I do.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
There is chance of reoccurrence.
Slim to none.
Slim to
0% for you, Maria.
Look at our
I don't
chances
mean
there.
I don't mean to correct you, but what I think about is not so much myself.
Right.
I think about our children and our grandchildren to come, because now they have
Two. Yeah.
a mother and a father, or grandmother and a grandfather that
Right.
both they hit the genetic jackpot, if you would.
So we
with
did
this.
screen my daughter.
Right.
She was 17. She's fine.
Right.
And the little one is too little.
Yeah, he has time.
He has time. And if there's one thing that your viewers can take from this, is advocate for yourself. That's it. Just if you think that something is going on, there's even a 1% chance, if you have genetic family history of stroke or aneurysm, it's so easy to get tested.
Right. And the very important message, to be your own best advocate, right? We all are very busy, and physicians are extremely busy. And it's not that they're not paying attention, but to some extent, they have prioritized care. And if you don't stand behind what you believe is appropriate, sometimes you're not gonna get where you need to be. And I've seen that actually with brain aneurysms, even with ruptured brain aneurysms. 7 years ago, when I came to Long Island, one of my first patients that I treated, she was a young girl. She had a horrible headache, and EMS came to her house and said, you're fine, you're young. She's 28 at the time, right, Jay?
Yeah.
She's 28. And she woke her up from sleep, and they said, you're having a migraine, you're fine, we're not going to take you to the hospital for this. And she said, guys, this is the worst headache that I've ever had, worst headache of my life, which, by the way, is the telltale sign of a ruptured brain aneurysm. It's the worst headache of my life. It's like somebody hit me in the head with a hammer, went from 0 to 100 like that in a split second. There's something wrong. And after a little bit of back and forth, she was transferred to a local hospital. Then she was transported. When they did a scan there, they called me. She was transported.
It had ruptured.
It ruptured, yeah. But, there's grades of rupture, right? There's people that are really bad after a rupture and people that are in a better spot. She was on those that are in a better spot, and then transferred to us, and she was treated, and she's done phenomenal since. I always say how she was a kickboxer before and after the brain aneurysm rupture. The brain aneurysm didn't rupture while she was exercising, but it ruptured while she was sleeping. So there's no real telling of, I'm going to do this activity and the aneurysm is going to rupture. So they have a mind of their own, and they'll do what they're going to do. All you can do on your end is, do everything you can if you know about it to make sure that your decision is the correct one, be it observation, treatment, the type of treatment you're getting, endovascular treatment, stents, coils, open treatment, clips. There's so many options, and always find somebody. And I would say my shameless plug would be that always find somebody that can offer all the treatment options and not just a subset of the treatment options, because of course you want to get as more of an unbiased opinion as possible. It's never fully unbiased, but of course,
I have another takeaway. Firstly, and you referenced it when you were telling your story before about how your friend on the prayer group had told you, be impressed by the doctor, not the hospital. And I think, having grown up on Long Island, lived my whole life here, I think there is a bit of a mindset out there that whether it's cancer or heart,
right,
there's like certain places that you should go, and that there is a better level of care in Manhattan,
right,
in the city. And I have to tell you that had we not gone through what Maria went through, I might have believed that as well.
right.
And the other thing is that the right doctor makes all the difference. And having had seen what Maria went through and the level of care that she received, it's not just what you just touched on, Dr. Bekelis, which is very, very true. You need to find a doctor who is very experienced and trained on all of the procedures that could be used to treat these types of situations, but also the energy and the mindset of the staff, both in your office
Amazing.
and at Good Samaritan in the pre-surgical and the post-surgical. I mean, honestly, it sounds crazy to say this because I had brain surgery there, but it was as an enjoyable experience as you could possibly imagine. Everybody
they're
was
amazing.
wonderful.
Everyone. The nurses there.
And that's why I invite my friends to the podcast.
I'll tell you, I just about a month ago had my 6-month follow-up angiogram, and some of the people in the pre-surgical and post-op areas were like, "Oh, I remember you and your wife,"
Right.
and like they made us feel very much at home, and
Yeah.
Even if only to provide a little bit of a distraction from what you're thinking about and what you're worried
Right.
about. That level of care is priceless.
Right.
And we both had a tremendously positive experience, both with your practice and with that facility over there. So if you're dealing with any of these unfortunate symptoms, or if you've been diagnosed, wholeheartedly would recommend that you see Dr. Bekelis.
Hands down.
Well, thank you guys, but
Not
you
because
know,
you're-
You're in
not because
Babylon.
we're friends.
yeah. Now,
No.
like I said, that's where you invite your friends. You invite your friends so that they shamelessly plug you.
I would also like the audience to know, where was he 3 days after his stent?
This guy?
This guy.
Well, I don't know about. Should we share that? Maybe.
After my angiogram, or
After
Well,
his
now it
stent.
sounds wrong.
It sounds wrong.
No, but so
After
here's
3 or 4 days.
like I said.
the angiogram you're referring to.
No, it was
No,
actually
it
your
was the
treatment, Mike.
stent.
Where was I? Oh,
Are you
That's where you were.
Okay, I thought
so
she was
so okay.
talking about-
I'm gonna share this.
Wait,
It's-
let's
the jet
talk-
game.
No.
That was the angiogram. That's what I thought you were talking about, but you're
No.
right. Good.
no,
Talking
no,
about
no.
stents.
So after Mike's treatment, so
After he had brain stent
surgery,
put
right?
in,
That's the problem again. With taking care of your friends. My wife had arranged for us to go to a concert, right?
we had plans.
We had plans, and of course, here comes Mike to interfere with the plans. He has a brain
mean, really.
aneurysm. Shame on him. And so that week, I'm treating two close friends, and the 3 days later, or Saturday, we were going to meet for this concert, and Jason was there, and a lot of the team actually in the, because we do a lot of team activities, they were gonna be in that concert. And I remember the Sunday before that week, I told my wife again, why the hell would we schedule a concert after this? I was like, it's so stressful. Like, if anything doesn't go right, Mike is going to be at home thinking, these guys are over there having a good time. And so, well, luckily there wasn't a problem. And actually, Mike and the other patient that were both my friends, they were asking about each other after their anesthesia. They were asking, oh, how did that guy do? Or how did that guy do? It was a surreal week for me. And I kind of said never again, but I'm sure it's going to happen again. It happens all the time.
Well, the concert was a good way to
Amazing.
celebrate because it was a successful week.
Yeah, and we were all worried that he's going to have a problem with his groin, but we said, anybody here can hold pressure. Everybody in this room can hold pressure.
There was
So
a
we're
neurosurgeon and like 3 PAs or 4 PAs in the
Correct.
room. So, I was in good.
You
I was
were in good
company.
shape.
We were in good hands.
You were in good shape. But
I wasn't worried at all.
Mike, God bless you. You're never worried.
He never is worried.
Like I said, let me do the worrying, and you just enjoy life.
Life's too short.
Exactly, and that's really amazing. And of course, I'm very proud of the team we have. Like you guys mentioned,
They're amazing.
they make us look good, right? We're on the back end. We do the technical part, which is not that challenging. The biggest challenge is to get people through that whole process without them feeling that it's the end of the world, right? You want them to be comfortable. Of course, it's serious stuff, but you're not going to bring the mood down as they're going through it.
And here you have the entire spectrum.
Of the
Somewhere-
stressed person and the non-stressed person.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's amazing.
That speaks a lot for your people. It speaks a lot for your practice. It speaks a lot for you. And we're very grateful
Well,
that
thank you, guys.
that we found you. And I remember Elizabeth, when she saw me at the hospital and Michael was getting was it your stent or your follow-up? I think it was
I think it might have been the angiogram.
it was a couple of months ago. And she says, I remember you were here crying.
Right,
I was crying
right,
for my angiogram.
right. But now
She remembered. I was like, yeah, Elizabeth, look at me now.
you're a veteran now. So that's amazing, and hopefully your story will inspire people, and I'm sure it will make somebody get screened if they're having headaches or what have you. And I am also sure that your guys being here today will save at least one person. So thank you for being here, for doing that. Thank you for your incredible story. Thank you for your friendship. And I'm looking
you for
forward to a
having
lot
us.
more concerts and other things.
Thank you for having us.
Maria, thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Mike, thank you so much.
Thank you, doctor.
All right.
Thank you, Jason.
Yeah, absolutely.
And guys, thank you so much for watching. And I hope you like this episode of Brain Buzz. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel, and we'll catch you in one of our next videos. Thank you.